from renewables, we have to rely on fossil fuels. Do you believe that they say that the oil companies can't afford to pay the American taxpayers fair royalties for the non-renewable resources they are extracting from our federal land? So if you do believe all that, then you probably believe that they have a plan for independence and energy sustainability for the future. Now, the gentleman there spoke earlier, the gentleman from Washington, a good friend, about a fig leaf hiding an embarrassing fact or a problem. There is one huge fig leaf over this debate today, and here's what's under the fig leaf. George Bush holding hands with the King of Saudi Arabia. Now, the Bush administration, last time I checked, same party affiliation as that side of the aisle, the Republicans, led by Vice President Cheney, last time I checked, member of the Grand Old Oil Party, wrote an energy bill in secret. They pushed for it for 5 years. And when the Republicans controlled everything, the House, the Senate, and the White House, they jammed through their energy bill over the objections of many on our side of the aisle. We said, wait, no, this isn't a forward-looking energy policy. It's going to make us actually more dependent on imported oil, and it's going to make us more dependent on fossil fuels, and it's not going to give us a new energy future that the American people need. It's not going to make us more efficient, more sustainable, and more affordable. Now, they are trying to hide that fig leaf. Now, they've also talked about the price per gallon. Since Speaker Pelosi became Speaker almost 2 years ago, there's been a big run-up in prices. Whoops! Here's when George Bush took office. Look at that. Gas was about $1.45 a gallon. Today, bumping back up, well, over $4 in some of the hurricane areas. Now, there's something else that goes along with that they don't want to talk about. And this is what's really going on here, folks. They want to talk about relief for American consumers. They don't give a fig leaf about relief for the American consumers. This is what the debate is all about. Look at these obscene growth in profits of the oil industry since the oil men in the White House, George Bush and Dick Cheney, took over. From $30 billion a year to $160 billion this year. Every penny of that extracted from the pockets of American consumers and American business. An unbelievable, unprecedented, breathtaking run-up in profits. And they say now they're concerned and they want to change. No, they don't really want to change. They don't want this to change. They want us to continue to be dependent on oil and foreign oil and, yeah, maybe a smidgen more domestic oil. Now, they've got a few other whoppers out there today. They say, well, no drilling in Alaska. Oops, sorry, wrong, guys. Actually, this bill would push the industry to get off its rear and beginning to extract oil from the former Naval Petroleum Reserve, renamed the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska by the Republican Congress, and put out for leasing. It's been leased. Bill Clinton, in fact, did the first leases, but guess what? 10 years later, not a drop of oil, even though the known reserves. Now, why was it the Naval Petroleum Reserve Alaska for 80 years? Because we knew there was a pile of oil under there, a huge pool of oil under there. More than 10 billion barrels. No one knows if there's any oil under the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, but they want to talk about the refuge. They don't want to talk about the fact that their friends in the hugely profitable oil industry have failed to extract any oil from the known 10 billion barrels of reserves in the Naval Petroleum Reserve Alaska. This bill would push for production there, push them to connect it to the existing pipeline, push them to bring that oil down to the lower 48. As members on my side said earlier, we need a transitional fuel. We need one transitional fuel. We need to enhance our oil supply. This bill would do that. We also need to go after natural gas in a much more robust way, a cleaner fuel, a fuel of which we have significantly more reserves here in the United States of America, which we don't need to import if we develop those reserves. This bill would do that. Am I done? I can't believe it.
Let me give the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
Thanks.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
This bill would also reform royalties. It would end the party. You know, we were the Minerals Management Service under the Bush administration was swapping oil or something for royalties, or maybe it was sex, drug, and rock and roll. This bill would reform that process. This bill would bring back integrity, fiscal responsibility, and give us a sustainable, renewable, and cleaner energy future. Vote for a new future, not the same old big oil, grand oil party plans.
The gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio's time has expired. The gentlelady from New York, Ms. Slaughter, reserves the balance of her time. The gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of the time.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, my plea to those Democrats who claim their support for more drilling and making America more energy independent, that I urge you to vote no against this sham bill by voting no on the previous question. By defeating the previous question, I will move to amend the rule to make in order H.R. 6566, the American Energy Act. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to have the text of the amendment and extraneous material inserted into the record prior to the vote on the previous question.
Can I accept that? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, once again, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question, because that means we'll have a vote on both their bill and our bill. And with that, I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hastings' time has expired. The gentlelady from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, this whole debate boils down to one issue today. Whose side are you on? Which side are you on? The side of the persons who sent you here, your constituents and the businesses that you represent, or are you on the side of the oil companies? I move the previous question, urge a yes vote on that and on the rule to follow, and move the previous question.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time, all time having been expired. The question is on ordering the previous question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The gentlelady from New York requests the yeas and nays. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Gentleman from Massachusetts, rise.
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 1434 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk reports the resolution.
House Calendar Number 264, House Resolution 1434. Resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 6842 to require the District of Columbia to revise its laws regarding the use and possession of firearms as necessary to comply with the requirements of the decision of the Supreme Court in the case of District of Columbia versus Heller in a manner that protects the security interest of the federal government and the people who work in, reside in, or visit the District of Columbia, and does not undermine the efforts of law enforcement, Homeland Security, and military officials to protect the nation's capital from crime and terrorism. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived except those arising under Clause 9 or 10 of Rule 21. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chairman and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. The amendment recommended by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, now printed in the bill, shall be considered as adopted in the House and in the Committee of the Whole. The bill, as amended, shall be considered as the original bill for the purpose of further amendment under the 5-minute rule, and shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. Notwithstanding Clause 11 of Rule 18, no further